Extra spicy. Hey everyone, Kyle with Andrew Hilton here, and as we get into the dog days of summer, and if you really need verification of just how damn hot it is outside, look at a poor sign sitting up here on the corner. Half of it got cooked this week. It actually looks like it was through a fire.
Quite something.
But coming up Wednesday, August the 17th, we are offering an opportunity for you to cool off. And, very exciting, no IPAs, no sours. We've got some kind of offbeat fun styles from Penticton's Abandoned Rail Brewing Company. Now this is a newcomer to the Alberta market. Heck, it's a newcomer to beer in general. They haven't been open very long. So we're going to taste some really cool stuff from them. We have their Goldenauer, their Pilsner, their Marzen, which is kind of a malty style, not quite an amber ale, but like a rich, sweet, kind of wonderful thing that normally you'd drink in March, but whatever. I want something cold and wet in the heat of August. And finally, they have a Hefeweizen called Red Wheat. This is a brewery that there isn't a whole lot about out there because they're fairly new, but it's one of those breweries that I've heard a little bit of hype about. I've had a couple of people come into the store and ask. I've had a couple of calls about it. They're starting to get a little hype around them, so I want to taste them with you before we dive all in on Abandoned Rail. So, do they make an IPA? Yes. Do they make a sour? Probably. I didn't check. But I do want to taste this lineup with you just to test the waters, get a feel for these guys. Anyway, all that and more coming up August the 17th at 6 o'clock. See you then.
Media Boutique.
Hey everyone, Kyle with Andrew Hilton Wine and Spirits here. And we're here to taste some beers out of BC, specifically out of the Naramata bench, out of the Penticton area, in the Okanagan, to be very specific. It's been a long day, pardon me. Here we are with Abandoned Rail Brewing. This is a very new brewery opening in March of 2022. This is the brainchild of Scott and Nicole Breyer. We do have a tasting order tonight. We are going to start with the Goldenauer. We're going to move on to the Pilsner, then on to the Marzen, and finally on to the Red Wheat or Red Hefeweizen. I do realize I said red wheat in the promo. Red wheat, red Hefeweizen, exactly the same thing. And I would also like to point out that even though we're starting with Golden Ale, Pilsner, Marzen, Hefeweizen, this is not, like far, a German-inspired brewery. Do they make some German beers? Yes, but they make 2 IPAs, they make a Saison, they make a Porter. It's just for their official mixed pack that we brought in just for the tasting. It's all their German stuff, apparently, which is great. Not that Golden Ale is German, well, kind of is, but we won't get into that too much tonight. So, tasting order is the Goldenauer, the Pilsner, the Marzen, and finishing with the Red Wheat. So let's jump into the Goldenauer. Let's talk a little bit of Golden Ale, and let's talk also about this beer. Sorry, I did still have some red Hefeweizen left in the glass when I was picking the tasting order. So if you're hearing what was in the glass, that's what it was. And good evening, Tyler. Nice to see you again. Also, nice to have a sellout in mid-August. That doesn't happen very often, but we are right out, which I assume means everyone is thoroughly sick of the heat and the being outside and being social and is back cowering inside where there's air conditioning or at least fans or a basement or maybe some sort of swamp cooler arrangement. Because screw being outside right now. Like, I almost miss the horrible smokiness of last summer where it was horrible and smoky and it made my lungs feel like death, but at least it was 8 degrees cooler. It was 28, not 35. You gotta give it that. I know. You don't know about that? I can live with the smoke. I can't deal with this heat. It's just too much.
Well, you gotta come to work in something other than a polo shirt. Jeans, dog.
Yeah, all I own is polo shirts and jeans. You might have noticed. I like heavy fabrics and my boots. I literally, I'm going on holidays, as is Aaron, the last week of August, so we will not have a beer tasting. We actually thought about having Craig and Eric in for this, and then we remembered that, yeah, Aaron and I booked our holidays at the same time, pretty much on purpose, because we were both gone, so we wouldn't have to miss. It's also a nice time to book holidays, but yeah, we did deliberately time that. So, can we get a little bit into German and Golden? Yes. So, Golden Ale is broadly the British version of what we think of now as a blonde ale or a not very interesting, I'll put a giant asterisk on there, ales. Now, this family of beers includes things like the Molson Labatt ale side, which includes Molson Export and Labatt's 50. It includes breweries that don't want to make a lager because, as we've discussed kind of ad nauseum here, making a lager is very difficult, very expensive, very energy intensive with all the chilling. It's a lot of work to make a very, very simple lager. So breweries that do that and don't charge a lot for it, like say SYC with their Clock Out or Cabin with their Zen Garden, I think are quite unique. Making a golden ale in this market, to me, is quite kind of unanimous with making a blonde ale. You're going to make a beer. It's not going to taste like a whole lot. It's going to appeal to your Bud Light drinkers. Unlike a lager, it doesn't have to lager for 4 to 6 weeks till it's done. You can turn out an easy drinking, very low hop beer every 2 to 4 weeks. Now, golden ale, as it is, does not start out that way. When we're talking about the Camera or Campaign for Real Ale version of golden ale out of the UK, golden ales really can be even hoppier than an IPA, but they tend to be very, very low alcohol. The golden ales out of the UK that we've gotten here, and unfortunately don't come here anymore because importing beer into Alberta is very difficult because of how strong the local scene is. They tend to be between about 2.8 and 4.5% alcohol, very heavily hopped, but all at the back end. So these are not beers with a very long shelf life, but as long as you drink them fresh at the brewery in the UK, they're basically hop juice, but because they're using British malts and British yeast, there's enough weight and enough balance behind it. It doesn't just taste like hoppy, bitter water. There's something to it. That's the provenance of golden ale, which when it came out of North America, kind of got lumped in with blonde ale. Now, I've talked about Canada, I've talked about the US, I've talked about Labatt's and Molson's, I've talked about the UK. Why are we talking about Germany at all with this? Well, that comes down to the fact that the first beers that were this color were Czech Pilsners, which were made by a Bavarian, and German-style Helles lagers. So this technology of making a pale malted barley, which was done in a coke oven at the time, or a coke kilned oven at the time, to make this dry, clean, pale malt, as opposed to something that had been, roasted over like a wood-burning fire or an open coal fire that would turn the barley very, very dark and introduce caramelization. This is very much a German technology, somewhat stolen from the British, who were experimenting with it about 5 years before. If you tuned into our German Pils, German Helles tasting a year, 14 months ago, we talked about this. We talked about how the two head brewers, whose names obviously don't come to mind because it was a year ago, they were getting started in the brewing industry. They went to the UK where they were experimenting with this new way of malting grain. It resulted in a pale malt, and they were just getting their feet under them. And this couple of Germans yoinked the technology, went back to Germany, and basically created the pale beer craze. So all of these beers do, wherever they might have been invented in the UK, they do all owe their provenance to Germany, because that was the first time it was really done commercially, or at least commercially successfully. So this is a golden ale. It's clean, it's bright, it's pretty. I do get a tiny bit of hops on this. Very, 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 very tiny amount. Why was I hesitate to get into it? Because that's a lot to remember, and I was 75% sure I remembered the story, but I was 100% sure I didn't remember the names of the two German brewmasters. So if I'd known I was going to get into it, I would have looked up those people's names. People like Scott and Nicole Breyer, the owners of Abandoned Rail, who opened in March of this year. March of 2022, if you're watching this on YouTube much, much later on. They opened this on the Kettle Valley Railway Trail, which is a Rails to Trails project, which has turned a whole bunch of the historic rail bed and rail trestles all through the Okanagan region into hiking, biking, activity trails. I don't think you can take ATVs on it, and probably for the best, really. Yeah, it's a neat thing. And on that trail, there was the old trail store that specialized in apple slushies. Now, the business is no longer in business because Abandoned Rail has taken over their building. I don't know exactly what an apple slushie is. I'm imagining some combination of applesauce and Slurpee. And I'll be very honest, that does not sound very appealing, but maybe I'm missing something. Maybe someone here is from that area, from Penticton, Armada, and had an apple slushy at the old trail store, but I don't know. Apparently these folks are going to try to bring back the apple slushy in the tap room, but I haven't seen any reviews that actually mentioned that they were doing that. But there are a couple of news articles about their founding. It says they're going to try and keep that tradition going, but their website doesn't mention it, and I haven't seen any reviews that mention it either. So I'm going to say that perhaps that got lost early on as a goal. So, what's unique about these guys? They do grow some of their own barley. They have 2 acres of barley. Obviously not nearly enough to supply a brewery, but they are doing their best to grow their own stuff. And they are also trying to be 100% Canadian sourced on effectively everything. Now you taste that. It's clean. It's bright. This kind of reminds me a little bit of like Annex Good Authority in the sense that there's a nice suggestion of hops. Yes, the Good Authority is a fair bit hoppier than this, but there is some hop here. It's got some balance. It's got some interest. It's got some spiciness, a little bit of cheesiness. If you really use your imagination, you could convince yourself there's some floral, like specifically lavender there in the mouth in particular. That's pretty good. It's a little bit estery, which suggests that they're using a British yeast. That is, for a low alcohol, very pale, very simple, like golden ale, that's pretty all right. You know what? There's not a whole lot that goes into it, but there's no flaws. There's no mistakes. I would have another one of those. I can't because you have to talk about 3 more beers on camera, but I'd have another one of those. A kohlrabi slushy sounds like actually the worst thing I've ever heard of. Yes. Perhaps I'm not advertising it very well, but you know what? It's not a style of beer that I particularly enjoy, but that one is done as well to style as I could really ask for. All right. Well done. Let's go on to number 2. Now, this is the One Track Mind. One track, because they're next to an old railroad. Haha, haha, haha. Oh, it's better than the puns we're getting to. All right, One Track Mind. Now, they don't say what style of pills this is. So, crisp Pilsner made only with malted barley, hops, water, and yeast. Well, yes, it's a beer. Thank you so much. Could have said double decoction, German pills, Czech pills. And if it seems like I'm really sticking on this, I am, because Pilsner it's a big category and there's a lot of substyles and a lot of variability. As you know, Tail Gunner goes through a ton of extra effort and a massive amount of extra cost to double decoct their malt, to boil their malt and add it back and boil their malt and add it back. That's a huge amount of extra cost. To just say something's a Pilsner with no delineation of what style, how it's made, other than like, yes, this includes typical beer ingredients. As much as I liked this, I kind of feel like it misses something at least on the introduction. So let's see how it presents in the mouth. I'm going to call that a German Pils. It has a round, sweet, Ritz crackery into like cereal sweetness in the mouth. It has appropriate bitterness, but not any real cheesiness, not any real earthiness. So I would not say this leans too far into, say, Czech style pill. Italian or American style Pilsner is right out. This is not hoppy enough for those. So, and yes, you're right. When people that don't know beer buy beer, they look for stuff they know. Yes, they do. But I feel like if it was labeled, and please shout at me in the comments if you think I'm wildly off base, but if I said this was an Italian Pils, or a Czech Pils, or a German Pils, would those same people be any less likely or more likely to buy it?
Right.
I'm not sure. I feel like you can make a as even if you just put, and this is going to seem really nitpicky because I am, you've met me. Even if you put Pilsner in a larger font and say German or Czech or American in a smaller font, so people who would just walk by casually and say, oh, that's a Pilsner. I like Pilsners. But people who are like, oh, it's a Pilsner. Well, what kind of Pilsner? And yes, I'm identifying myself as the worst kind of beer customer. It's why I own a store. I should be the worst kind of customer. I'm shopping for you. Those of you who are less fussy, you're going to come in and have a nice time. Those of you who are awful, awful people like me, you'll still have a medium time, even though you'll still be miserable about 5 things I can't really help. But I'm doing it for people like myself who are awful, awful, awful people. And that's why I think it's a good store, is even if you really are wildly too picky, not about the weeds out front. Everyone should be mad at me about the weeds out front. But about the content in the store, I hope that even the fussiest person would say, you know what? Okay, I can live with this. And really, that is kind of my my goal with all of it. So, oh man, I haven't had a tail gunner Pilsen too long either. It stopped selling for us all of a sudden, so I dropped it off the shelf. I put the last 3-4 packs in the mix for. We need to bring that back for fall, though. That's a great beer. And Craig, that's an interesting answer. You've got an expectation if they title it that you think, and I would argue that let's use IPA as a category. And again, IPA is a much broader category. If I said it was a black IPA or a white IPA or a double IPA or a West Coast or an East Coast IPA, I think that people would have an expectation. Now, with some notable exceptions, there's no such thing as a white Pils or a black Pils. And yes, there are black Pilsners out there, but they're just slightly hoppier Schwarzbiers. But really, I mean, brewers can brew IPAs to specific subcategories. Brewers should be able to brew Pilsners to specific subcategories if they're good brewers. I don't know. I'm curious. Do people here like this is a Pilsner? It's up to you to decide what kind. Or would you rather have it be a little more delineated, like, hey, this is an Italian Pils. Look out for hops. Hey, this is a German Pils. It should be really clean. Hey, this is a Czech Pils. It's going to smell like broccoli and Brussels sprouts and feet in the best possible way, far greater than you ever imagined. I like that, but maybe it's just me.
Yeah. Descriptions.
Naming things properly does have at least a little utility for me anyway. I'm loving that the kohlrabi content is still pinned because every time I look down at my phone to look at the new content, like new comments, it's just right there. And thank you, Tyler. Yes, I would too. I would rather it say what type of Pilsner it's attempting to go for than not. That said, there's some very, very good Pils that don't. Blind Man 5 of Diamonds doesn't. Now, I'm really struggling to come up with another one that I actually like that doesn't say.
Yeah, that doesn't say.
I will say, the more I have of this, the more I like it. I think it's very balanced, very clean. Yes, I was mean to its packaging, but I don't think there's anything bad about the beer in the slightest. I think it's a very solid example of a German Pils. Aaron, how are you feeling on the first two? Because the first two I think are very similar. They appeal to a similar type of beer drinker.
Sure, yeah. I thought the first one was really refreshing.
Okay.
Delightful. Yeah, I really liked it. It was very drinkable. The One Track Mind, thought it was a bit plain on the off the jump there, but
Do you think we had the order wrong? Do you think you'd have taken this? I actually like the order here,
good
but
order. Yeah, I like this Pilsner. I don't know. It doesn't. You're calling it a German.
I think I'll call this a German Pils because your 4 major styles are German Pils. Has some bitterness, has some hop, has a big cereal richness, but it's not overtly hoppy and it's not overtly cheesy. you have Czech style Pils, which has a big earthiness, a big spiciness. It certainly has some cheesiness from those Saaz hops. It's very rich, it's very spicy. The hops are a big part of it, but it's never a beer that I would call overtly hoppy. American Pilsners, which are kind of typified by beers like Victory's Prima Pils, not a style we see in Alberta, actually, oddly enough, very often, but it's very prevalent in the US. It's kind of like a Czech Pils, but instead of going for like earthiness and spiciness, they go for like the brightness of American style hops. You'll see Cascade, you'll see Simcoe, you'll see Citra in these, and they're not quite India Pale lagers, because those tend to just be, it's an IPA, but we use lager yeast. This is a subtler take. It dials it back a little bit. And then finally, you have Italian Pils, which are exactly like American Pils, but they use European hops. And they're actually the newest of the Pilsner styles to come to prominence. They're all very different, and I'd like to know, because
it's pretty subtle within its like category, though. Hey.
Well, I'd also say that like a slightly aggressively hopped German Pils could easily be mistaken for a bad Italian or Czech Pils. Yeah. And a completely inappropriately hopped in madness German Pils would taste indistinguishable from an American Pils. I'd like to know what style they're shooting for, because if I know what style they're shooting for, I can say, okay, I know what they're going for. It's an American style Pils. It's going to taste like an IPA, but like really dialed back, but it's still going to have the fruitiness and the cleanness and the brightness of a lager, and it's going to be really refreshing. I like that style. I like Pilsners. I like IPAs. I'm quite famous for liking IPAs. Wait. But, you know, I like IPAs. It's a style that's really built for me. I like Italian Pils for the same reasons. But I don't know. I feel like when you declare the style, this is such a minor bullshit little nitpick. Yeah. But it really matters to me. Damien, yes, I would generally say that a German-style Pilsner tends to have more perceivable sweetness than other styles, but I'll also say that all of the other styles tend to be more heavily hopped. So in terms of grams per sugar per liter, you might actually find that German Pils can have less sugar, but because it has less bitterness, German Pils tastes sweeter. And that's a really minor little difference, but it does make a difference. So like if you're going to have an American style Pils that has a ton of bitterness, a ton of hopping, if it's not at least medium sweet, it's just going to taste astringent. Where because German Pils doesn't usually have that much hopping, they can actually make a drier beer than an American Pils and have it taste sweeter. And yeah, my expectation of Five of Diamonds, and I see the difference here between Craig and Eric. I would actually go on Eric's side here, and I would say I would expect Five of Diamonds to be more of a German style, because I tend to get more crackery richness and a little less hop profile. Also, 5 stars to University Professor Craig Coburn on his spelling of Czech. All right, enough bullying Craig. Let's move on to our third beer here. This is the Marzen, a style that some people may be unfamiliar with, but are probably familiar with by its other name, Oktoberfest. Now, Marzen is a beer that is related to the Saison style in the sense that it is usually made in the springtime. It is usually made with the overwintered grain, and it is usually drank for Oktoberfest. So this is a beer made with March's grain, which is the grain that's kind of left over from the previous year's harvest 5 months later. It's made in a low alcohol, big, rich, sweet, lightly spicy style. Almost always low alcohol. Alcohol in this being 5.7. Well, happy Oktoberfest to me. It's usually made at a much lower alcohol, usually about 3.8 to 4.2, because it's supposed to be served in those giant 1-liter steins at Oktoberfest. Now, the Marzen style, of course, predates Oktoberfest, which is probably more the style that this is aiming to copy here. And I like Oktoberfest style beers. They're fun, they're rich, they're crackery, they're easy drinking, they're sweet. We'll see how this one shakes out, because it's a higher alcohol, which is more the ancestral style of Marzen, less the modern commercial Oktoberfest.
Color. thought you had it already.
No, it's fine. If Sky's just sitting there drinking it, everyone at home will wait for Sky. Ooh, has Far done a Marzen? I know that Far has, yes, they definitely have, because Far has done an Oktoberfest. I don't know if they've ever canned it, but I've seen a Far Oktoberfest on tap. I would actually call Oktoberfest beer or Oktoberfest Marzen a sub-style off of Marzen, which was a big, sweet, rich kind of Vienna-style lager, but brewed in Germany, not Austria. Usually brewed in March for consumption in the spring, summer, fall. The lighter version of which, yes, was diluted because they served it in giant 1-liter steins, but there's a part of me that strongly suspects was also somewhat diluted because it was designed to be sold to tourists on the Platzel, and for them to buy it by the giant novelty 1-liter steins. I kind of wonder how much Oktoberfest beer or Fest beer Marzen really bears a resemblance to old school Marzen. I'm curious about this one because Marzen is not a style we see except as a Fest beer, as a, hey, it's July 31st. Let's brew a whole bunch of Oktoberfest style lager so that we have kegs of it for when people come around asking for Oktoberfest beer. And then we can charge a little more for something that really didn't cost very much to make. This seems to be going for the other style. This higher alcohol, it's being sold in cans, not just kegs. I'll be very, very curious to try this. Before I stick my nose in it, we should be looking for caramel, a little bit of noble hop spiciness, just enough to carry off the sweetness. But it should be big, sweet, rich, satisfying, kind of like the German lager version of an amber ale, but with a little less hops. And that delivers. It's like drinking a piece of rye toast, really. I mean, with like marmalade and butter. A little more of that. That's utterly fantastic. I get dill, I get caraway, I get a little tiny bit of cinnamon. I definitely get rye grain spice. I get so much on that. I don't know if that, and this is the great thing about Marzen. Is it noble hop spiciness? Or is it the way the barley's malted? Or have they blended a little rye? Or I'm not sure. Because, I mean, that spice characteristic is almost tied to molasses, which would make me think it was tied to the grain. It could be really clever brewing where the malt and hops are so synonymous with each other. It's so perfectly balanced that you can't tell. I would almost think, and it's not because I want to slag on these guys as brewers, I would almost think that that's so hard to do that that spice has to be coming from the malt, just because it's a 1 in a million beer that can make the hops so perfectly in tune with the malt that you think it's part of the malt. This is as good a Marzen as I've ever had in my life. This is better than any German example I've ever had. This is better than Far's. This is spectacular. And it's coming out of Naramata, from a brewery that I hadn't heard of 2 weeks ago, that is just a brewery. I'm going to go to this brewery actually in 10 days, so very excited for that. This is absolutely spectacular. So this is stuff in liter starting coming at 5%, usually 4% or 3.8. Because A, if you're serving it in liter steins to drunk tourists, you want to, minimize the fist fights and vomiting. Quite literally, you want to minimize the trouble and the overconsumption. And for 2, Oktoberfest, at least in Germany, and anytime you do these big Oktoberfest festivals, they're a bit of a money-making scam to a point. I don't know. I like this style of Marzen. I don't think any of the draft Marzens that I've had equate to this quality. And that's not a slam on anybody who runs an Oktoberfest around here or anything like that. It's just, Oktoberfest beer or Marzen style beer that is brewed for Oktoberfest is generally brewed to this standard, whereas people who make Marzen because they love Marzen, it's brewed more to this standard, and I think they're just different things. So this is going to be on the shelf. Oh no, Eric, this, assuming that I can get this outside the mix pack, I will absolutely be bringing this in. To my palate so far, this is the only thing we have tasted thus far that is absolute surefire, has to be on the shelf. This rocks, I need it. This is everything I like about an ESB, except it's slightly better and it's a lager. It's everything that I want and more from this style. And yeah, brown sugar, cinnamon, caraway, dill. What more do you want from a beer, really? This is delicious. This reminds me, and again, I always come back to this story, and everybody is now really tired of hearing it, my very first beer that I ever fell in love with, which was the Big Rock Maybach, which was a 6.5% Maybach with a goat on it, because people really like putting goats on bocks for obvious reasons. And I bought like 5 or 8 flats of it and sat on it in my garage till it went bad because I just loved it so much. This reminds me of that. It's a big, sweet, sticky lager that it just tastes wonderful. Maybe not on a plus 35 day, but like if we got this into like September 15th, October 15th, just before stout weather, this all day, every day. This is lovely.
I think your glass is doing you a lot of favors because I'm missing. Mostly want to smell it.
Try it out.
Glass.
Okay, let's get a little more in there for you.
Same that the glass makes sense.
The glass makes a massive difference, as does how much is in the glass. So, yeah, because there's not much there. You're going to get, well, the beer is going to warm up a lot more because you're touching the glass, handling the glass. There's less volume. It's going to revert to air temperature.
Oh, Jesus, that's way different.
Is it?
Way.
Yeah, I really like it like this. Can I try yours?
Yeah. Remarkable.
Sorry. Oh, that's weird. That's
crazy?
so spicy.
It's weird.
And it's also like gluey and dense and oddly sweet, whereas this is wide open and cereally and broad.
Yeah.
Anyone at home who's not drinking out of something like approximating like a big wine glass, do yourself a favor, get like the bigger wine glass shape, because wow, it changes this beer. It's absolutely spectacular out of this. It's a little bit dense and chunky and fruitcakey and sweet out of Aaron's.
How would it be straight out of the can?
Not great. It kind of misses the point out of the can, I'll be honest.
Okay. I feel like a lot of people drink straight out of the can.
Well, yes, but they're going to miss something. I would still drink that out of the can and be happy with it. I would be really tired of it after 2 cans because it's a little higher alcohol. It's fairly sweet. It doesn't have any hops, and I'm an IPA freak.
Fair. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah, no, that's lovely, but it needs the right glass. Okay, let's talk about our beer tasting. Oh, you're doing the zoom in rather than okay. Right. Let's talk about our beer tasting. Beer with an E on the end. Brewed by the Beer family in North Vancouver. And we'll get to the naming in a second. So, Beer Party Pellet. Beer Party Parrot is a guava, passion fruit, and coconut sour, which I'm really excited for. Like, it sounds like a better version of pina colada in a sour ale. It sounds really fun and bright and fresh. Very cool, very chill. It's a hoppy Pilsner. Again, they don't really say what type of pills, but when I see hoppy pills, I usually assume American-style pills. I mean, this should be really bright and fresh and fun. Now, before we went on air, I think Sky, Aaron, and myself said the word bloobs about 250 times because this beer is called Even Cowgirls Get the Bloobs. And this is a blueberry lemonade sour ale. And God, we've had a lot of fun with the name. obviously referencing the book, which I think was made into a movie. I don't know. I've never seen the movie. I've definitely read the book. But yes, blueberry lemonade sour. I love lemonade sours. Annex has a rockin' one out right now called Infinite Mirror. Lemonade sours are great. And then there's the one that makes me just want to wrap up this whole damn shop. Now, let's be clear. It's done really cleverly. It's like brass on a label that looks like fake marble. It looks like the most Karen label of a beer you've ever seen in your life. And it's called Live, Laugh, Love. Yes, it is. It is a double dry hopped IPA with a gold on marble theme. And oh yeah, it's Live, Laugh, Love. We're going to borrow Ethan's Live, Laugh, Love that he has hanging in his kitchen. Also, Ethan's fired, by the way, for having that sign in his kitchen. But we're going to hang it up here. It's gonna be lovely. So this is beer brewing out of North Vancouver. You'd think that being called beer brewing would be the end of the terrible naming conventions, but oh no, it is just the beginning. So yes, that is coming up. That is next week. And yeah, I don't know if I can drink something like that either, but I'm the one on camera, so I don't have a choice. You at home could choose to use it to kill your least favorite houseplant, or to clean your carburetor, or to water, your garden in a very small amount. I have to drink that. And I will admit, this brewery overall gets very high ratings. They do. I like their story. I like the fact that they're and again, their website says everything every brewery does. We have a very carefully curated number of styles. We do really, Canadian local brewing. Of course you do. It's all the same shit everybody says on their website. And I mean, it's almost part of it is it's the most mayonnaise sandwich brewery website I've ever seen, and they have something called Live, Laugh, Love. I mean, really, it's beer, Live, Laugh, Love, IPA, and then 3 other things that we'll, I guess, taste. I'm just in it for that. It's gonna be hilarious. I can't wait. I mean, there's the obvious jokes that hazy IPAs are just like white dude pumpkin spice latte.
Should we see if we can get a guest then?
We could get a guest.
We should try to get a guest. Yeah, we'll try.
Featuring Ethan and his Live, Laugh, Love sign from his kitchen.
Tupperware full of lasagna.
And a Tupperware full of lasagna. It'd be lovely. All right, on to a beer style that I spent about 25 minutes today really chasing down whether I could find some history, some interest, something that set this apart, because I have seen red Hefeweizens or red wheats in the market going way, way, way back. Wild Rose had a red wheat, and they spelled red with a W because it was Wild Rose, just like they do with raspberry. Wed wheat. But this is a style that's been around for a while, these red Hefeweizens. And it's a good idea. You take those kind of banana and clove and spice notes, you take the richness of a Hefeweizen, and you just introduce the caramel and raisin and nutty notes of a red. Those 2 things should go together really, really well. But there's really not a German tradition for this. There's not a North American tradition that I can find other than some notes on hey, this brewery does one, this brewery does one, this brewery does one. Great. Who did it first? No one's ever written an article on that. Nobody knows. So this is kind of a style that everyone is familiar with, but doesn't really have a written history. And the more I looked into it, the more I kind of got fascinated trying to chase this down, and I couldn't find a consensus first beer that did this. I feel like it must have been someone famous, but I can't find a first beer that did this that blew up in North America, because every year we have a different thing that's big, be it New England IPA, fruited sours, Hefeweizen, whatever. Mexican cerveza brewed in Canada, apparently this year is the craft style. But But there's never been a year where this was enough the hot style that people wrote articles about it. It was always just this like, oh, hey, we should do a Hefeweizen. Yeah, but this brewery did a red Hefeweizen. We should try that. And it's kind of in this weird undercurrent style that nobody ever talks about, which is neat in its own respect. But let's taste it. Oh, is that Cooper typeface? Also, props to Eric who can like, props to Eric who can spot Cooper typeface like on site.
Yeah.
Apparently, so can Aaron.
It's close, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the lower case E's are a little.
They're a little too tilty. Yeah.
But maybe they've been like modded to like avoid the copyright or something like that.
Well, you certainly have the banana here that you get out of a Hefeweizen. Like, it's big on the banana. I would actually say that I don't want to be mean to this beer because I've enjoyed the previous three. This one leans into the fake banana. This tastes more like banana candy and less like real bananas. I say taste, smells. No, this doesn't smell like real banana to me. This smells fake. And I don't like that side of it. You coming down the other side? I guess it doesn't smell like fake banana. It doesn't smell like ripe banana. It smells like overripe banana. It smells like banana bread. It smells like a more condensed, riper version of banana. Actually, when I put banana bread in my brain, then all of a sudden walnut, ginger, overripe banana, they all start just showing up in this beer.
Yeah, spiciness is definitely another penchant.
And then it finishes surprisingly dry. Like, you smell this, and you smell this, and you think, oh, well, this is going to be big, it's going to be sticky, it's going to be rich, it's going to be like a Doppelbock. And you give it in the mouth, it's actually quite dry, which is clever hopping, because without proper hopping, this would finish very, very, very sweet. And yeah, Eric, you are very correct before I said it, because I know there's a 15-second delay on comments. So you said it before I did, but you're right, overripe. So Collective Arts, ooh.
My comments stopped working.
Are we really comparing this to... So, Craig, very seriously, are we comparing this to Collective Arts' attempts at banana? It's a serious question. I do want to know, because, yeah, that's... them's fighting words.
There we go.
That's shockingly pretty. It's not working for Tyler. Well, fair enough. It's not my favorite thing on the table either. I would say it's firmly my number 4. Ooh, firmly. It's going to be 1, 2, gap, 3, 4. And I know I had a whole bunch of nitpicks about stylistic, but yeah, no. It's a bit over the top. Well, you're not wrong. I mean, the banana is really heavy. And yeah, I think this had to follow the Marzen because of how big the banana is and everything else, but the Marzen's the best beer on the table, and it's not particularly close for me. Before I bias everyone's rankings, this to me is the best beer. This Pilsner, for all my quibbles about, hey, you should declare style, that's clearly the number 2. And then there's a bit of a fall off. The Golden Ale is nice, but I think if you're going to use this much hopping in a Golden, you're going to close out some of the people who want like a very simple ale. I think that if you're going for a general list crowd pleaser, I would say something that Old Man River's Blind Canyon Blonde. I think that does the job a little better because there are still people out there who would find this too hoppy. And if you're going for a hoppy blonde, I would say that something like Annex's Golden or Good Authority does actually do a better job of this style if you want it a little hoppier. I think this is a very, very nice beer, and on its own merits, doesn't deserve better than third, but maybe could run in this category. My issue with this is it kind of lives in a no man's land of it's not hoppy enough for people who want that hoppier style golden ale, and has too much hop for people who want something like Blind Canyon Blonde or want the ale equivalent of a Bud Light. It's in an odd place that it kind of serves no masters, and it doesn't really, to me, have a great market. This is a lot of banana. Arguably too much banana.
It's got a long aftertaste too.
It has a long aftertaste, and there's things to like here. I mean, it's cakey, and it's rich, and it's sweet, and it's slightly spicy. It's well made, and maybe it's just because it's plus 28 right now, but I don't really want to drink that tonight. It's too sweet, it's too spicy, it's too banana-y. It's just not doing it for me tonight at all. Oh hey, next to the Italian Pills. Wow, number 10 on the Italian Pills, like worldwide or just for Alberta? Because we're getting to the point where like an Italian Pills list of 13 could be Canada-wide, Alberta-wide, North America-wide, worldwide. And I think, yeah, I expect they do sell a lot of number one. I just think it should just pick a side. It could do one or the other very, very well. And in the end, it kind of sits on the fence. And I think the Pilsner eats its lunch. But that's just me. You know, I'm kind of picky. You might have picked up on that. So, next week, we'll live, we'll laugh, we'll love. And, you know, we'll have a really good time doing it. And then a week off. Then we are away. So, yeah. I will say goodnight to all of you. Thanks to Aaron and Sky. This was a lot of fun. I will say, we are definitely going to have these two in the store. If we get enough feedback on this one, we will bring it in. I would not look for the Red Hef to make our shelves. I just don't think it's going to be a winner for us. But at absolute bare minimum, look for the Marzen and the Pils. And I'll be on the shelves next week. Also next week, beer brewing, where we'll live and laugh and love, and get our daily quotient of bloobs. Yeah, it's gonna be great. Thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and good night.